Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to my channel. So, I just want to share with you this article that I recently read because because it made me so mad. And my best friend is, kind of sick of talking about it, although it also made him really mad too. But I feel like I can only talk to one person about it for so long before I've just talked their ear off. Oh my god, it's the stupidest article I have read in recent years. Oh, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. And author, if you ever see this video and it makes you feel bad, good. Okay, your article is bad and you should feel bad. Right? This article is terrible. Absolutely terrible. I cannot believe you would write this and put it online. It's called Another Perspective on Astrology at Work. So, just to make sure we're all clear on this, astrology is the belief that like the movements of planets and stars can have effects on like human psychology and personality traits, and perhaps can influence like human events in terms of like everyday life, like in terms of the way that people act and behave. And this is contrasted with astronomy, which is the scientific study of celestial objects. Actually, let's have some fun here. Put it in the comments. What do you think my astrological sign is? What do you think my zodiac sign is? Put it in the comments and we'll see if it's right. Let's just start the article. This article is from hrdive.com. So it's like an HR news website, and it is by Caroline Colvin. Okay, this was published October 13th, 2023. Here's how it begins. One night, I looked over at my phone and saw I had an audio message from one of my friends. Nothing out of the ordinary, but as soon as I hit play, everything changed. I finally did it, they recounted with glee. I finally got everyone's birthdays, so I know their zodiac signs. That makes it sound like you possibly got these birthdays by like browsing through some kind of computer files you weren't supposed to be looking at. Although maybe they just gave it to you. So yeah, I mean, maybe they're talking about their friend group. Maybe that's everyone, right? I am a journalist who is friends largely with other journalists. So what did my data-obsessed friend do? They made a spreadsheet of zodiac signs for each staffer. Then they color-coded the data by astrological element and made a pie chart to show the share of each element in the newsroom. Luckily, Caroline adds, an explainer for the uninitiated. Fire signs include Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Water signs include Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. Earth signs include Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Air signs include Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. I promise it'll be important later. I promise it will never be important, okay? Ever. Oy. Also, I mean, the fact that they made a pie chart shows that they're probably not as data obsessed as you think they are. Pie charts are so, oh my god, pie charts are the worst. I hate pie charts so much. A donut chart is better, but pie charts are terrible. They're not good because we're just like, humans are like really bad at comparing like the areas of different shapes. We're just not very good at it. We're good at like comparing like the height. We're good at comparing length. Well, I'll tell you that much. So that's why pie charts are just like, they're not great. Because yeah, we can tell if one shape is bigger than the other, but we're really bad at figuring out like, okay, is that shape twice the area of this shape? we're really terrible at that. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me that someone who believes in astrology wouldn't question their own intuitions. If the concept of birth charts in the job sphere sounds wild to you, you're far from alone. Thank God. Twitter exploded when someone shared a job posting requiring applicants to share their birth chart as part of the application process. Okay, that makes me so mad. That makes me so mad. And I'm going to explain why as we keep going through this. Furthermore, I mean, I probably just wouldn't even apply for that job because that is alarming. Like my friend, I too am curious about my coworkers' zodiac signs, and when I gain that knowledge, I use it to my advantage. I use it to my advantage. But to be clear, I don't use someone's sign to pigeonhole them or water down their personality into a few buzzwords. Instead, I use astrology to get a general sense of the kind of person I'm dealing with. The same way generations before me have been obsessed with Myers-Briggs tests. Oh, well, you're in you're in good company. And the same way nerdy millennials religiously ask about Hogwarts houses. Okay, I think you overestimate how popular that was with millennials. Like, frankly, if someone asked me what my Hogwarts house was, I would probably just like block them or stop talking to them. Or just like walk away from them. Myers-Briggs tests are, in fact, still used in leadership development courses to help workers understand their own approaches to work. Okay. Well, then I'll be happy to tell you right here that the Myers-Briggs test is also hot garbage that a lot of corporations waste a lot of money on, even though it has no validity and it's very inconsistent. Because for one, a lot of times when people retake the test over the course of like a couple of weeks, they get different results. And for another thing, it's very easy to get the Myers-Briggs test to spit out an answer that you want it to give, which is a problem when you're trying to administer something that's supposed to discover things about you, that's supposed to tell you things that you don't already know. Because if you're instead influencing the test to tell you what you want to hear, well, that's just telling you what you want to hear, and you already know what you want to hear, right? That's the entire scientific process. Like, that's why science exists. Like, I think sometimes we get into the weeds about like what science is. Like, we think of it as being like some kind of body of knowledge or like an institution or something. Like, no, science is the scientific method. It is a process that humans created because in the course of our human experience, it has become very apparent to us that we have very flawed reasoning systems, that we are subject to biases, and those biases, we're not even aware of them when they're happening to us, and that we will subconsciously influence the results of what we're trying to test because our reasoning has flaws where we take shortcuts, we make assumptions, we make snap judgments, we want ourselves to be right. We don't want to hear things that we don't want to be true because it hurts. And all those things and many more other factors will make us subconsciously influence the results of a test, whatever we're trying to do, when we don't want to know what we're trying to influence it to be. We want to know what's actually true. And the scientific method helps us to combat those biases and to minimize the amount to which we are able to influence the results of something or minimize the effects that these flaws in our reasoning can have. Because that is a very human tendency. That is an extremely normal human response to an unexpected result in a test. You're like, oh, well, actually, like you start trying to explain it and start trying to like, oh, well, I wasn't wrong. It's just, like, it's a very difficult human tendency to stop. Like it's almost impossible to stop it, and that's why you have to make a process that makes that less likely, because we will do it. Um, like that's the whole thing with science. It is a process that we created because we have noticed that we tend to get things intuitively wrong a lot of the time in very predictable ways. And so if you actually want to know what's true, you need to be ready to mitigate those factors. So that's, the Myers-Briggs test is not really, it's because it's kind of not falsifiable. It doesn't really, because you can influence the result that you want to get very easily. Like the questions are not exactly cryptic, okay? And so, I mean, I don't know if it's harmful or not, but what I am saying about the MBTI is that it's kind of a waste of time and resources, and I would be annoyed if my company was wasting time and resources on it. It's garbage. But what I will say is this is it's not the same as an MBTI or even a Hogwarts house, okay? Because I didn't get to choose when I was born. I didn't even get to choose to be born. You are just placing upon me the characteristics that are supposedly associated with a given astrological sign based on when I was born. At least the MBTI asks me questions. At least I have any influence whatsoever about the results of an MBTI on me. At least a Hogwarts house has any input from me at all. Like seriously, I have nothing. There is nothing that is required of me for you to make this little astrological profile of me. All you have to know is my birth date, right? So I have no control whatsoever. I have absolutely zero input into that profile that you're making about me. At least with a Hogwarts house or an MBTI, at least it asked me anything at all. At least I had any control or input into that process whatsoever. It's such garbage, okay? What if I said, like my friend, I too am curious about my coworkers' genders, and when I gain that knowledge, I use it to my advantage. Because, like, I'm not trying to pigeonhole you or anything. Like, it's just, women, they tend to be a certain kind of way. I'm just getting a general sense of how you are, because women, they're just a certain kind of way. Like they tend to be just more family oriented. They tend to be like natural caregivers. So I'm just getting, no. I'm not pigeonholing you. I'm not pigeonholing you. Okay. I'm not pigeonholing you or watering down your personality. I'm just getting a general sense of your personality. I'm just getting a general sense of the kind of person I'm dealing with. Okay. It is no different from your Hogwarts house. Okay. It's no different. It's no different. Just makes me so mad. A case study for astrology questions in hiring is the next section here. In theory,
in theory, I feel like that's going to be doing a lot of legwork here.
A recruiter interested in seeing someone's full birth chart could be curious about the potential traits of a person, rather than the much maligned stereotype of someone cutting someone from a talent pool because they are a hot-headed Aries, for example.
Yeah, I mean, it would be terrible if someone was making stereotypes about people, like that they're hot-headed. I mean, listen, look. This job, listen, Janet. This job, it's a leadership role. And so we're looking for someone who's like really dedicated to the company. And you're a woman who's like 29. So, like, we're not saying that you're excluded from the talent pool because of that or anything. Like, we're just saying, like, we're not watering down your personality to a few buzzwords or anything. It's just, women tend to want like a family and stuff. So like, you're probably, you're probably going to want a family. You're probably going to want to settle down. You probably just like aren't going to be as committed to this job as you really need to be. I mean, how seriously could you be taking your career? Like, but like, no. We're not excluding you from the talent pool. We're just going to be subconsciously thinking that and implying it, but like, we'll never say it. Okay. Like just like we wouldn't ever exclude someone because they're a hot-headed Aries. But we will be thinking about it. Like we want to consider in the hiring process, and we want to consider astrology in the hiring process, but like not because we're not going to hire someone because of it, like just for fun or whatever.
To take the thought experiment further, consider someone's sun sign reflects their baseline personality, their moon sign reflects their emotions.
How's that different from your baseline personality?
And their rising sign reflects how they're seen by others. Their Mercury is how they communicate, their Mars is how they assert themselves, and their Venus is what they love.
Citation needed. Okay. So you are choosing, though, whether to hire someone or not hire someone based on this bullshit, right? This bullshit that they have absolutely... Because, listen, I don't have any say in what my sun sign is, in what my Mercury is, what my Mars is, what my Venus is, what my moon sign is, what my rising sign is. I have no say in that whatsoever. And I think that while you certainly can discriminate based on that, I don't think it's illegal to do that. I think it should be illegal to do that. But regardless of the legality of it, you shouldn't, because we've decided as a society, mostly, that you can't decide whether to hire someone or not based on things that they can't do anything about, that are like intrinsic to them and that are not pertinent to this role. Especially, this is, oh my God. And for another thing, there have been so many experiments done on astrology where, like, for example, where they've had 28 astrologers who all approved of the experiment as being fair beforehand, and all of whom agreed that they should be able to get, a correct rate of at least 50%, where they did a validated psychological inventory on a couple hundred people. And then they shuffled those personality inventory results where, like, it's basically a personality test, but it's a psychologically validated one, a scientific one, that gives the same result every time, and where participants can't really influence the results. It was the CPI. And then they had the astrologers review star charts for each of those subjects. And then the astrologers got a choice of 3 different CPI results for each star chart. And they asked the astrologers to choose the correct CPI that goes with that star chart. and they gave them 3 options for each star chart. And the astrologers all agreed that they should be able to get at least 50% right before they did the experiment. And they all agreed that this design of the experiment was fair. Guess what? They got, I believe it was 34% of them correct, which is exactly what you would expect, because it's a 1 in 3 chance. I'm not saying it has to be better than 50%, but you would think that it would be better than exactly what you would get by chance if this had any validity whatsoever. Like, you would think that some of them they would have gotten right using astrology, but no, they got 1/3 of them right, which is exactly what you would expect. I mean, if this is all true, where like your sun sign reflects your base sign personality, your moon sign reflects your emotions, how you communicate, how you assert yourself, if all of that is true and you can reliably use it, you would really think the results of that experiment would have been very different. I mean, it would have been impressive even if they got 40% of them right, but they didn't. They got 33%, which is that is exactly what someone would get if they just randomly picked 1 out of the 3. And that was like, and it was like 229 profiles. So, and they had 28 astrologers doing each one. So I don't know, man. But it seems like there's not a lot to it. But that's not even the point. This is bullshit. This is some absolute bullshit, because just because these things are not true of every person with that birthday, and if you think they are, then you're an idiot. I'm sorry, you're just stupid. I know that some people really, really trust their own intuitions or whatever, and maybe that's just because you've had like a pretty straightforward life experience or whatever. I question my intuitions constantly because I just know that they're wrong a lot of the time. And that's the thing about biases too. When we're talking about biases like confirmation bias or like availability bias or whatever, like, unless you're consciously considering those biases and you're considering them as possibilities, like, you're not aware of confirmation bias when you are engaging in it. Like, you don't know. It happens subconsciously. You have no idea you're doing it. Like, it's not like you're like, I think I'll use a confirmation bias. I think I will look for information that only confirms my beliefs. That's what I'm going to do. Let's look specifically for information that only confirms my beliefs, and then I'll just throw away all the stuff that refutes it. Like, that's not what you think. It happens subconsciously without you being aware of it. That's why we have to be so careful. Because people will be like, no. Like, I was completely like fair with this or whatever. I'm doing this completely, I'm not influencing it. And it's like, yeah, no one thinks they're doing that when they're doing it. Everyone thinks they're being very fair about it, but like, we've realized, like, nah, even if you think you are, you're usually not. Like, that's just how humans work. Whatever. No one bats an eye when recruiters ask you questions like, what's your preferred method of communication? Do you like to collaborate with others? What are your strengths? What gets you up in the morning? I make the case that discussing a birth chart would be no different. Okay, actually it is different though, because one of those is actually asking the person, and the other one is making a bunch of baseless, faulty assumptions about a person that they had no influence over and no input in and no control over whatsoever. Those are very different. That makes me so angry. It's very different because one of them, you're involving the other person, and the other one, you're not. Right? Right? I'm biased. Yeah, you are. That should have been the end of the article right there. I'm biased. End of article. End of article. That's it. You're biased. But as an even-keeled Libra, we're symbolized by the scales. So stupid. I'm biased, but as an even-keeled Libra, well, it seems like even Libras can be biased then. Interesting. I bet like this is like the description of a Libra, like, you're usually even-handed, but you are subject to biases at some times. or whatever. Like you have a tendency to, have your emotions get the best of you, which can result in you being a little bit biased and hot-headed at sometimes, but usually you're very fair and balanced, right? Like that sounds like something that's like super specific to you, right? But it's not. Like that's just like that's true. I mean, it's true of Libras, but it's also true of humans overall. Like that's the problem with it. It's like yes, that is true of Libras, but it's also true of everybody. Like it's true of human beings. Like, oi.
I'd like to think that people who are introspective enough to use astrology in a job interview won't be screening candidates out for something as shallow as a culture fit.
Then okay. Then what are you doing with this information? What is the point of you having this information at all? That's why, when it comes to your age or whether you have kids, or whether you are married or whatever, that's why we have things that you are not allowed to ask someone in a job interview. Because sure, we'd like to think that people who are introspective enough won't be screening candidates out for something as shallow as a culture fit. We'd like to think that. We would all like to think that. But the reality is that's not how everybody thinks just because they're introspective enough or whatever. Okay, that's not how they think. And so we can't let you ask that question. People might ask those questions for perfectly like innocent reasons or whatever. They might, but experience has told us that frequently, or perhaps even the majority of the time, they are not asking for an innocent question, and it is going to influence their hiring practices. And we have decided that that's wrong. And so you're not even allowed to ask it. You're not allowed to ask it because of how that information subconsciously even gets used. Maybe it's consciously, but it also could influence the decision subconsciously because humans are biased. And we don't know we're biased when we're being biased. We have no idea. It is subconscious. It's not something you intentionally do. You don't decide, I'm going to be biased today. And I think that if you were introspective, you might realize that your common sense or intuitive view of the world can be wrong a lot of the time. It just is. Like, our intuitions are wrong all the time. And it's very naive to think that nobody could possibly have malicious intent with this information. And that's exactly why you're not allowed to ask someone if they have kids. You're not allowed to ask someone if they're married. You're not allowed to ask it because it will influence your decision. And if it's not going to influence your decision, then why are you asking it? What does this have anything to do with the job? If you're not going to use it to make a decision about hiring, which that's what you're saying. You seem to it seems like you're trying to have it both ways here. You're trying to say like, oh, well, like I wouldn't not hire someone just because they're an Aries or whatever. Okay, well then why do you need to know my astrological sign if you're not going, why do you need that in an interview if you're not going to use it to make your hiring decision? The point of this interview is for you to make a hiring decision. So, which is it? I don't see any reason why we have to talk about anything that's not going to influence the hiring decision during an interview. That's the point of an interview. And don't say to get to know you or whatever, like, because yeah, but like you're not getting to know me to see if like you want to come home with me. You're getting to know me to see if like, is this the sort of person that like is going to work well at this company, right? And don't say that's the same as astrology, because it's not the same. I get to decide how I behave during the interview and how I answer the questions in the interview. I don't get to tell you what that astrological profile says. I don't get to pick what time and what date and in what place I was born. Nobody asked me what my astrological profile should say. Nobody asked me that. So why don't you ask me a question? If you want to know things about me, ask me. That's why this is garbage, and you should be embarrassed about this. And maybe you should be a little bit introspective about what you're saying here.
I imagine instead these recruiters would seek to understand deeply if this person would be well suited to the responsibilities of a specific role.
How seek to understand if this person be well suited? How is that different? That's just you kind of rewording whether you would hire someone or not based on astrology. You're like, oh, I totally wouldn't not hire someone because they're an Aries, but like at the same time, like I just want to, I would just seek to understand deeply if this person. Oh my god! Again, like I wouldn't say like just because you're a 29-year-old woman that you're not suited to the responsibilities of this role. It's just like life tends to happen, and sometimes priorities get a little jostled around, and then you're just like, I don't know if you're ready for the responsibilities of this role, because like it's kind of it's a kind of a long-term full-time commitment, like, and I mean, like, no, you're telling me that you're like very dedicated to what blah 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 blah, right, but you're also a woman, like, so probably just change your mind tomorrow. I mean, how women are. So no, I don't need to hear anything from you. I already know this based on your, just like your astrological profile. Like, do you see how fucked up that sounds? That's because making assumptions about people based on garbage. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And I can't believe you're trying to say that you wouldn't make a hiring decision based on it, but like you clearly would. And if you wouldn't make a hiring decision on it, great. Then you don't need my birth date, and you don't need my star sign, right? You don't need it. We'll just stick to what you're going to use to make a hiring decision here, because you're not going to use my astrological profile to make a hiring decision. So great. So let's just stick to the stuff that in this interview, let's just stick to the things that you're going to use to make a hiring decision. Like, because like, I feel like that's a better use of our time. Like, I don't see why we need to talk about any like tangential stuff. First of all, this entire paragraph is in parentheses right here, which I don't even know why these parentheses are here. I did reach out to a couple of big name astrologers in the podcasting and tech space. Jesus. One did not get back to me by the time of publication, and one declined to comment. That should have been a clue for you, okay? In the name of compliance, HR would have to be mindful that these dialogues, like all matters of diversity, center belonging and psychological safety. What the fuck? Listen, Caroline, my sweet Caroline. I don't think you are as introspective as you believe yourself to be. If you were, you would see why this is fucked up, and you would delete this article, because it's... Boy. A case study for analysis of current employees. Because, we've already hired them based on astrology, so let's analyze. The end result of my friend's exercise was fascinating to me because it disproved my hypothesis. I'm glad that it's disproved a hypothesis. So, what was your hypothesis? Was your hypothesis that like astrology is useful in the workplace or appropriate in the workplace, and now it's disproven, and you're like, oh great, okay, time to get rid of all this astrology crap in the workplace. Can't wait to hear what your hypothesis was. All right. It disproved my hypothesis that most people in journalism or most leaders are earth signs. My lived experience. When I worked in PR, I had two bosses who happened to be Virgo men. When in my last journalism job, I had two bosses who happened to be Taurian women. It made sense to me that these earth signs would be wearing the pants. It only tracked that these workers with undeniable drive and strong skill sets would be calling the shots. Most of my friends' newsroom ended up being water signs. That answer didn't shift my worldview, unfortunately, but instead piqued my curiosity. So we're already seeing here, like, first, this writer likes to have it both ways. Like, they kind of give a they kind of acknowledge that they're wrong, but then they like go back to explaining why they're actually not wrong. Like it's funny how she's like, it disproved my hypothesis that most people in journalism or most leaders are earth signs, and then and then she's like, it disproved my hypothesis, right? But that answer didn't shift my worldview. So like she's like, oh, I guess I was wrong, but like I kind of still think I'm right. It seems like you kind of have a tendency to really be stubborn when you are presented with directly contradicting evidence. Not that I would say any of this is really evidence. This, I would say, if this is evidence of anything, it's evidence that like it's just kind of random. That's it. Like, yeah. I mean, sometimes you're gonna have more people in the earth signs, more people in the water signs. Sometimes it'll be even. Sometimes you're gonna have like, 6 water signs and 6 fire signs. Sometimes you're gonna have 9 water signs and only like 3 earth signs or whatever. Like it's just random, and that's what random looks like. It looks like you just have seemingly arbitrary numbers, okay? And if you plotted it on a distribution, it would be a normal distribution. Because that's all it is. Like, just because you have a majority of earth signs in your workbook doesn't mean anything. Like, that's why, like, Spotify Shuffle, it's not actually random, because due to a flaw in human reasoning, random doesn't feel random enough to us. Because the chance that you'll hear a song by the same artist like twice in a row, or that you'll hear that same song again later in the same day or whatever, it's too high to us. And when that happens to us, it feels like it's not random. But like that is what randomness is. Sometimes randomness, you end up with 2 of the same thing in a row, and like, yeah, that's unlikely, but like actually any arrangement of this is equally unlikely. It just happens to be that you are assigning special significance to this circumstance. And so you notice when that happens. And so because we don't like that, because it doesn't feel like it is random, but to us, like, it doesn't feel random. And so it can't actually be random. And that's kind of the same thing going on here. That's another reason we have the scientific method, is because when we see things like, oh, well, all my bosses at my last job were earth signs, like it feels like that's not random to us. Like that feels like it's a pattern, because like we really like to find patterns in things, because if we can recognize a pattern correctly, then that can like give us an advantage in the world, or help us understand something, and help us get by a little bit easier. And so we really want to see patterns in things. We really like to find patterns. And so sometimes we will put a pattern somewhere when there's actually like not a pattern there. Like just because all your bosses at your last job were earth signs, like, I mean, sometimes you flip a coin 5 times in a row and it comes up heads every time. Like it's not super likely, but like sometimes it happens. Like it happens some of the time. Someone always wins the lottery. And it's funny how like that like experience of them all being water signs, and she's like, it disproved my hypothesis. That answer didn't shift my worldview. Okay, well, that's your first problem.
But instead piqued my curiosity. Maybe emotionally fluid water signs are naturally inclined to approach the reporting process with an open mind and heart, seeing whatever truth their sources presented them and presenting it with tact.
Or maybe it's because astrology is hot garbage, is complete nonsense drivel that is just random. It's just Barnum statements that sound specific, and they sound true, but they're just random. And some people are good at journalism and some people aren't, and they could have any of these kinds of signs. And it seems like you have not found a like don't you see how you thought that most people in journalism were earth signs, and then everyone in this other one is water signs. So it's, the reasonable conclusion would be like, maybe this doesn't really tell you anything about people's performance in journalism. Like maybe this just doesn't really tell you anything. Maybe it's not related, but like instead you're like, oh, okay. So like maybe it's because like these water signs are like really like emotionally fluid. And like the thing I would have said is like, it would prove whether this was like reasonable if you could predict based on career what type of sign they would be. That would be a scientific way of approaching this. Would be if you can predict with like 50% accuracy the sign of a particular career, then there might be something to this. Okay. But like you couldn't, right? And instead of that, you kind of like explain it away. You're like, okay, well, like, okay, earth signs are still good at journalism, but like so are water signs. So clearly like water signs and earth signs are good at journalism. But like when really it's like, it seems like maybe the sign thing doesn't predict abilities in journalism. So dumb. It's so stupid. Oh my God, it makes me so mad. I joked that I'd have to see everyone's full chart. See what I mean? See, when you don't set what will falsify your hypothesis at the beginning, you start moving the goalpost. Oh, okay. Well, like you thought that you knew it based on their sun sign, but now you're saying, oh, well, like I have to have their full chart. Like I don't have their full charts. Like that's why my prediction doesn't make any sense. Okay, this has always bugged me. Astrology's been done for like thousands of years, right? Okay, but we've only known about Uranus since 1781, and we've only known about Neptune since 1846. And so if all these planets, because if you look at someone's like full star chart or whatever the hell, they include the positions of Uranus and Neptune. And so you would think that like somewhere in those thousands of years, astrologers would have been like, if like astrology were a legit thing, or if it were like scientific or whatever, you would think that astrologers would have been like making these charts and they're just like, I'm looking at your star chart and I'm like looking at you as a person, or I'm looking at like the events of your life. And like, there's just some influence here that we're not getting with this chart. Like most of this is right, but like there's something else that's influencing your personality, or like there's something else influencing this that like we have neglected to include here. Like you would think that somewhere in those thousands of years and all these predictions, all this work that's been done and all these writings of astrology, you would think they would have predicted the existence of Uranus and Neptune, right? Because astronomy or like mathematics, physics, a scientific discipline, predicted Neptune even though we couldn't see it, because they were able to observe that something was affecting the orbit of Uranus in a way that could not be explained based on their current model of the solar system. So there had to be another planet, and the other planet had to be right there. Like they knew exactly where to point the telescope. They made a prediction about where the planet would be, pointed the telescope where it was predicted to be. Bam, there was Neptune. It was right there, exactly where they predicted it. They found it immediately based on this prediction. So like that's like the power of science, is that it has the ability to make predictions and get them correct. You would just think, I'm just imagining like where, and then maybe once Uranus was discovered, like, okay, so like they're adding all of this to like these horoscopes that they're making, right? And they're like, oh, because Neptune's a pretty big planet, right? Neptune's bigger than Venus. Neptune's bigger than Mercury. Neptune's far bigger than Earth. It's bigger than the moon. It's bigger than Mars. Like you would think it would have a pretty big influence. I would think. I mean, it's named Neptune. Neptune's a pretty potent god, right? you would think that they'd be like,
oh man, we've added in the influence of Uranus here, but like we're still, I don't know. I'm looking at the person, I'm looking at the events of their life. All right, I'm looking in here at their horse. We're missing something. There's got to be another planet that we don't have here.
like you would think with how many astrologers there are, if there were anything to this, you'd think that they would have been able to predict the existence of Neptune. But like that never happened. How come? Is it because this is garbage? I feel like it is, because if Neptune is having a real influence, you would think just by comparing your observations, you would be able to predict that you were missing something there. You would be able to sort of have a Neptune shaped hole, right, in your understanding of astrology. Like you'd be like,
oh, this would make so much more sense if there were a Neptune right here. If there were another planet that just slots into this hole in my horoscope.
Like, you know what I'm saying here? Because that's what science does. Like, science saw Uranus move in a way that was inexplicable, and they're like, okay, there's got to be a planet. The planet needs to be this big, and the planet should be right exactly there. And bam, there it was. Like, I just think if there were anything to this, there would have been a consensus among astrologers where they were like,
there's got to be one more planet. There's got to be one more planet. And it needs to be, like, there must be one more planet here because all of this is happening and it doesn't make any sense. So there needs to be one more planet here and it must be in the 7th house.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like, that would be impressive. If they predicted Neptune, they're like,
there's got to be another planet here. It's got to be da-da-da-da-da, and it must be in the 6th house.
And if it were there, I'd be like, holy shit, astrology's real. But guess what? They never happened. And guess what? They didn't add Pluto until they added Pluto as a planet. And guess what? Most of them still have Pluto in there because guess what? It's if you suddenly discard Pluto, it's like, so were all the predictions you made based on Pluto, where there's all just like wrong now since you're not including Pluto anymore? Like, so they have to keep including Pluto. It's very funny. But yet they don't include objects that are bigger than Pluto. They don't include asteroids, and those are closer. I don't know. It's a little bit inconsistent. I'm just saying.
It's worth noting that as Myers-Briggs shifts and their self-identified Hogwarts houses change, so do people's astrological expressions. The long-held theory is that over time, as you get more comfortable and confident with yourself, your rising sign will matter less.
You know what? I'm going to guess that. I wonder if it matters less. I love this.
You'll care less about how others perceive you and go with what's at your core, your emotions, your essence, your moon sign. At the very least, I'm in favor of astrology dialogue in the workplace because it may be a useful shorthand for fostering greater understanding, more tolerance, and psychological safety. There's an opportunity to improve belonging with a simple question, what's your sign?
I don't think so. I don't agree with that because I think it causes you to make even more assumptions about people based on shit that they don't have control over. And also it's a waste of time. It's garbage. It has been proven to be garbage. It's not true. It has no predictive power. It has no validity. And it's something that you are foisting upon people who have no say in it and that they have no input in. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. And furthermore, it's just a waste of time and it's kind of invasive. Like, how dare you? This is embarrassing. This is awful. This is alarming, frankly. Yeah, let me know if you want me to do a Myers-Briggs video, okay? Or if you want me to do another video on astrology. It's fine if you find astrology to be like a useful tool for like self-reflection or whatever, like more power to you. I don't care. I don't care. But do not bring this into the workplace. That is garbage. That's bullshit. You can do whatever you want in your personal life. You can have whatever personal beliefs you want. I don't care. But you can't bring that to work. You can't make assumptions about people at work based on that. That's not fair. And I just don't think that people who don't share your beliefs should have to waste their time with this garbage It's a waste of time. It's a waste of company resources. And you shouldn't be making hiring decisions on it. And you shouldn't be using it and then pretending you're not making hiring decisions on it. If you don't make hiring decisions on it, then you don't need to know it. When we don't need to discuss it. Right? Right. I don't see why anything needs to come up in an interview that you're not going to use to make a hiring decision. So I guess we don't need to talk about that. How about that? So, oh my God, this made my blood boil. Also, okay, I don't know what you guessed my birthday was, but I will tell you now, my birthday is November 2nd. So let me know if you got my sign right. Yeah, my birthday is not November 2nd. It's not even in November.